Let's talk a little bit about the schedule. Brutal once again, but maybe somewhat manageable. Obviously, LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama on here. You got the rivalry game at the end. A huge opener against Virginia Tech in Atlanta, a game that I am very much looking forward to. Labor Day weekend, unless your team is terrible and takes 2 losses before the first poll actually comes out. Labor Day weekend is a ton of, I can do the self-deprecating stuff towards my team. Labor Day weekend's a ton of fun stuff from Thursday to Monday. And so you get that opener against Virginia Tech. I'd imagine South Carolina is a 4 to 7 point favorite in that, on a neutral site, they feel like a slight favorite, but no more than a touchdown. An early chance to really, get the season off to a good start. And then a manageable first month, South Carolina State, Vandy. I think Vandy isn't going to surprise anybody this year, but a team that, talent wise, you should win at home. On the road to Missouri is tricky, but then Kentucky. So as tough as the schedule is back end, I think it's pretty manageable early. And shoot, if you get off to a 5-0 start, you talked in our last segment about people backing off of it. Everybody will be right back on that hype train. Maybe even at 4-1, but certainly if they can get through that first month, which they should get through it pretty unscathed. If they can get through it, there'll be a lot of people back on that bandwagon.
Yeah, I know, man. There's a lot to unpack in that conversation because for the first time in a long time, you feel like the first 5 weeks are incredibly manageable. And you mentioned Virginia Tech. I was drawing a little bit of a comp to the 2012 season just a couple of weeks ago on our program because, as you mentioned, you got Virginia Tech, and then you come home and you got South Carolina State coming to town. Vandy comes to town. You go to the other Columbia, the not as nice one, Columbia, Missouri. No, I don't mean any offense to any of those people. It's a fine place, and but it's tough to win up there. It's tough to win up there, and this has turned into a really tense rivalry. And then you got Kentucky coming to town. Then you have an off week. All right, so let's play the game, right? Let's have some fun with it because it's March. This is what we were doing a couple weeks ago on Inside the Gamecocks. Let's say they get through it, and they're sitting there at 5-0, and they came into the season in the top 15. Shane Beamer has we were talking about this on our show with Shane back in January. When you return a quarterback who's got the hype of sellers and you return a couple of All-Americans like Dylan Stewart, and they look last year, oh, shoot, they went 9-3 in the regular season last year. Who did they open with? They're in the top 15. He's like, that's how some of these guys do it. So we're all kind of predicting that they, while they will probably be questioned after some folks learned that they actually did lose way more talent than they thought in the draft, they will still probably come into the year in the top 15. So let's play the game and say that they run out and they run through that first 5, like I just mentioned, then they get to their off week. Then they go to Baton Rouge. Well, back in 2012, South Carolina opened the season and they had they rattled off a ton of wins, and then they had the big one in Williams-Brice. Number 6, South Carolina, number 5, Georgia, and the Gamecocks literally ran the Dogs out of the ballpark before the end of the first quarter. It was 21-0 before you got your seat. I mean, they beat Georgia like a rented mule. And so then where'd they go? Baton Rouge. And it was a top 5 matchup down there. I think LSU was number 5 or number 6. Carolina was at number 3 in the country. And they came up just short. They lost 23-21 that night. And then the next week they went down and played a Will Muschamp Florida team and gave up, if I remember correctly, 189 total yards of offense against the Gators and somehow lost 44-11. But they won the rest of the games. They went 10-2, and they went back to the Capital One Bowl, I think it was that year, and I think it was the Outback Bowl in 2012. That was the Clowney hit, yeah. So there's a little bit of a parallel there. You go, oh shoot, they can go back to Baton Rouge. Here we are 13 years later. You could hand these guys something they've been coming. You're not going to eat. Brian Kelly isn't going to be eating grass. But it is a manageable front 5. I don't know what to think about Virginia Tech. I just don't know enough about them, and so I'm going to certainly reserve judgment on those guys. You mentioned Vanderbilt. Diego Pavia is suing the whole world so he can continue to play college football. That's great, but you'd like to put that to bed pretty early. That trip to Columbia, Missouri, that's a tough game, and I know that Missouri has lost Brady Cook, and I understand that Eli is incredibly high on his talent, and I know he's got talent. They've got some great players out of the portal. They've got a nice signing class. And this thing here, Carolina kind of owned this thing for a while, and then Missouri every year they were winning the game, and
Yeah.
this was getting old. And South Carolina finally got that turned around last year. Uh, so if you get it, you got Kentucky coming to town. I think they're better than the Wildcats are, but you never know with Mark Stoops. But I do think, yeah, you're right, TJ. Now all of a sudden you could be sitting here going, "Well, now, wait a second here. This team's 5-0. They came in the top 15. By that time, they're probably knocking on the door of the top 10, or I mean the top 5. And then you got LSU, and then you got Oklahoma comes to town, then Alabama comes to town, and then you go to Ole Miss, and then that's where your money's made.
Yeah.
That stretch right there, you're going to figure it out. So it could be really a really unique situation for the Gamecocks when they flip that calendar to October. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I think also like diving into that LSU game a little bit more even. You think about the fact that LSU has 3 really tough games to start September. LSU opens up upstate, like you've said a couple of times. They've got to play Florida. That is in Baton Rouge. Florida beat them last year, and wasn't a great team. They got hot late, like South Carolina did too, but lost to Florida, and they got to play them again early, and we'll see what the Lagway hype looks like. And then they got to go to Ole Miss the week before the bye. When you guys are playing Kentucky, they play up in Oxford, so we'll see what again Simmons or whoever their quarterback is on that side. So I do think that one, yeah, that's the litmus test. Oklahoma comes to town. We'll see what Mateer looks like. I'm high on him, but their defense should still really be good. The Bama one is a ton of fun. All the storylines from last year, all the storylines around DeBoer, who the heck their quarterback is, like all those things are pretty interesting, I think. And man, if there was a game that the LSU game is probably the revenge factor game if I had to pick one. But man, I feel like South Carolina felt like they were so close last year to Bama, and they were, right? Where they lose by 2. That one's going to be interesting because what does DeBoer's offense look like with his guy at quarterback? It almost feels like if you could split with LSU and Bama, man, you really set yourselves up. Obviously, you don't want to concede a loss this early, but most teams in the SEC feel like if they can split with LSU and Bama, they feel like they're in a pretty good spot because those are 2 of the only 3 or 4 teams that have won a championship in the SEC for so long.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that little stretch. I mean, that's exactly what you said. LSU, OU, Bama, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, all in a 5-game stretch. I mean, you at worst, I think, have to go 3-2 there. And if you go 3-2 there, you probably have to be perfect everywhere else. But I don't see any reason why South Carolina can't, at least projecting out here in the end of March.
Yeah, well, I mean, so that stretch there, LSU, and then in Baton Rouge, and then there's just so many interesting things to think about with this stretch. LSU in Baton Rouge, Oklahoma in Columbia, Alabama in Columbia, and then you get Oxford against Ole Miss. Um, okay, so starting with LSU, and you mentioned it, you could. I don't think this will be the case, but you could have an LSU team that is living in a very toxic environment by the time that game is played, because you know as well as I do, and anybody else out there that is around the game of college football and has a set of ears and maybe even a set of eyes if you need them. If you lose at LSU, 2 of those, because they're not losing to Southeast Louisiana and they're not losing to Louisiana Tech, but of those other 3, if you lose a couple of those, oh, Brian Kelly is going to hear it, left it. And, I'm not concerned about Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly's been around a long time. He can handle it. But the program itself, you in this transfer era, you just don't know what can transpire. Is he able to rally the troops? And here's our chance to get things right. We got South Carolina, we got Vanderbilt, we got A&M coming to town. This is our chance. We'll get everything back on track and we'll move forward. That obviously is a very good possibility. But at the same time, coming off of last year, if you open up and you got a couple of losses, by that point in time, it could all be falling apart. And then you move it forward. Oklahoma, I mean, South Carolina, what happened up there before really the lights came on in Norman last year was really baffling. I mean, Carolina had 2 defensive scores. I mean, it was 21-0. You're like, I think we're a minute into the game. It was like a minute into the game. And it was crazy. Our first trip to Norman, and you're looking around going, this can't be happening, right? I mean, this is winningest program in the history of the sport on their home field, and we act like they've never won a game here. Um, but it's a Brent Venables coach team and a Brent Venables defense. And so, you don't write those guys like that off. You mentioned the quarterback a little while ago. I don't know what to think about Alabama. I mentioned this today with my buddy Mike Morgan on our show. We were talking about the most difficult September slates out of the SEC, and we both kind of agree that we do think it's LSU because of those three that you already mentioned, TJ. I said, don't forget about Alabama. Everybody's going to look at Georgia and they're going to say, oh, they got to go to Athens. I'm like, whoa, hold on just a second. Y'all can, and I'm not saying this because I'm on your show. I'm just trying to use some logic here. Y'all can write Florida State off all you want to. That's fine. But they're not void of talent. It is game one where everybody's trying to figure themselves out. And this is going to be the first time in a while that place is going to be packed. They get the fans back in there. That is like, I can't imagine what people in Tallahassee are already saying. Golly, just get to August 30th. Get Alabama in this ballpark so we can get this thing rolling. So, Alabama could step into that game. They got Tennessee before that. They got to go to Columbia, Missouri. They could come to Columbia, South Carolina with a couple of losses already, maybe, or even more. And it's the first time I've been able to say that in a long time, any of us, right, about the University of Alabama. So I don't know. And then obviously going to Oxford, you're not really worried about the atmosphere. And I mean that very respectfully. Those are incredible fans. That's a great trip. That's a great ballpark. I mean, but you're not walking into Baton Rouge at night. But it is a Lane Kiffin team, man, and you just don't ever know. I mean, he just continuously goes to the portal and finds guys, and it is hard to win in Oxford. So there's just so many different things that can come out of those four games. And, at the end of the day, you might be better than three of those four teams. Carolina might be better than three of those four teams, but they might not be. And I do think that there's a lot of similarities with all these teams right now. In the SEC, and I think that's going to lead to a lot of coin flip games, a lot more than maybe you would initially think.
Yeah, it's a I think it's almost a negative byproduct of the realignment in the SEC, where with the Big Ten, they added a couple more powers, or really kind of one power, and then we'll see if like Washington or USC can kind of get back to what they should be. But they added the Oregon, but it's still so top heavy there. And what the SEC used to be was pretty top heavy. I mean, let's call it what it was. Every week was tough. There's no doubt. But for a long time, Bama and LSU, and then Georgia had their, like, it was just very, very top heavy. Well, now there is, a rising tide raises all ships. No pun intended for Alabama being the team that kind of did that for a large part of the last decade. But it has risen the level of play so much in the SEC, where you're right, man, there is so much parity. It's almost, and I know that Mississippi State's not very good. I know that Kentucky had a pretty bad year, but it is almost NFL level parity in the SEC. It's crazy, man. Like I know this is more about South Carolina than the SEC in general, but yeah, I mean, South Carolina could literally go anywhere from 10-2 to 6-6, just because that's how good and I would probably say that for about every team in the SEC, with maybe a few exceptions for the other teams that we mentioned, right? And so, yeah, and I don't, certain schedules would set themselves up to where like Texas isn't going 6-6 or whatever, but I most teams could, and that's just you got 3 or 4 wins, you got maybe 1 or 2 that you think are going to be really tough, and in your 6 coin flips or 7 coin, however many you got to find a way to win more than half of them if you want to be an upper tier team. And so, yeah, it's certainly made it interesting from that perspective, because you just really don't know. There's so much parity in the SEC that it's kind of absurd how close the teams really are. You'd like to think like Georgia and Texas are probably, a half step ahead of a lot of teams, but even then, like they're not like far, they're not like Bama 09, looking down at the rest of the league. And man, that's great for me as somebody who doesn't care at all about any of these teams. It's great for me to just watch and enjoy, but it's got to be nerve-wracking and kind of a pain in the butt for these coaches because it's so hard. There's just no gap.
No, not much of. Not much of one. I mean, I don't know what to think about the league right now. I mean, obviously, I'm an SEC guy, and I believe in this league, and I see it week in and week out. and how difficult it is to be successful in it. And a lot of that too is just the environments that you play in. I mean, it's just hard. I mean, it's so hard to go on the road in this league and win games. But at the same time, like I look at this. The crazy thing about what you're saying is, like, I'm sitting here looking at it right now, and if you said, okay, give me out of the SEC, out of the Southeastern Conference alone. This isn't to pick on other conferences. That's not what I'm getting at. I'm saying that there will be a group from this group, but I'm saying, okay, it's March or April, and which teams do you think, if it goes right, have a chance to be in the college football playoff in 2025/26? Well, I would say Alabama. Believe it or not, this is at the bottom of this list. But if it all goes right, I personally believe that the Gators could be there.
Yeah, I agree with that.
If it all goes right, you got to get through Long Island University first.
In USF.
But after you get through, I didn't even know Long Island had a team, but they do, and they're coming to Gainesville. Obviously, Georgia. I just don't. Everything that I just said about LSU, it could always be the exact opposite. Sure. So you just can't remove them. They have to remove themselves from the conversation. You can't remove them from the conversation. So LSU, Ole Miss. I'm going to say Missouri, and here's why. Okay, but I know they lost Brady Cook, and I think he's a guard who might go in the top 5 picks in the draft. Can you believe that? Luther Burden. They lost a lot of guys, but listen, Central Arkansas, Kansas, Lafayette. Those are their first 3. They got the Gamecocks coming in week 4. I mean, they know how to beat South Carolina, and it's on their home field, right? And then UMass. Okay, now I'm not trying to slam down the team that I'm closest to here, but that ain't Murderer's Row.
No.
Now, I mean, the obviously, clearly, the one you circle is South Carolina, obviously, but then they have an off week, and then they have Alabama, and guess where that is? In Missouri. They don't even leave town until October the 18th when they go to Auburn. Can you believe that? But they go to Auburn. Who knows what they'll look like this year? I don't know. And then they got Vanderbilt in Nashville. Okay, they got another off week. They got A&M. Guess where that is? Columbia.
What a schedule, man.
They got Mississippi.
I couldn't have made a better schedule than this.
I know. They got Mississippi State, Columbia. They got They go to Norman for the Oklahoma game, and then they go to Fayetteville to end the season for the Arkansas game. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I mean, these are hard places to play. I know that. But by the time they get there, they could be playing for a spot in the college football playoff. So that's why I put them in there.
Yeah,
because everything I just read. All right, so you throw them in there. I would throw South Carolina in there. I would throw Tennessee in there. I would throw Texas in there. And I don't know about A&M and Oklahoma. I just don't know. But anyways, I just rattled off half the league is what I'm saying. And in the other ones where you go, I don't know. I mean, and then you go back to last year and you gave the Vanderbilt example. I mean, shoot, they played Texas well too. So I mean, just you never really truly know. I think it's more. I personally believe, and I know that this is an arguable point. And that's fine and fair. I think it's indicative actually of how strong the league, not necessarily how weak the league is. I think there's some people. I look at TJ when I look at a league, ACC, the SEC, whatever. I generally try to take the 2 top teams and the 2 bottom teams and move them to the side, and then what's in the middle, and that tells me the strength of the league. And I think when you look at the SEC, if it's not above everybody, it's tied with somebody at the top. Personally, but we'll just have to see again because you don't know anything anymore until week 3 or week 4 of the college football. You just don't know. You don't know how your team's going to play in week 1 with all those transfers. I don't know how this team's going to play in week 1 with all these transfers. Alabama doesn't know. LSU doesn't know. Nobody knows. I think the only one that you can ever really truly say, well, we know, is the team that spent the most money because you have the most talent. So at least you'll know that they're incredibly talented. Like we knew Ohio State was incredibly talented. The question was, are they going to cough this thing up or not? And ultimately they did not do that. But everything else, I think you can come back around, September 20th and you have a much better idea of what you're looking at.
Yeah. How do you avoid Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, and Tennessee on your schedule? That is when I feel like Florida plays like all those teams, which I'm certainly not upset about, minus Alabama. But yeah,
I don't know.
Eli couldn't have made a better schedule if they let him pick it. Maybe
Well,
he's got some dirt on something.
I'll say this: I know I'm a big believer. I want the 9-game league schedule in the SEC. Personally speaking, I want more league games. Now, there's going to be coaches like Shane. I think Shane really wanted to stay at 8, and for good reason. It's hard to play more, especially when you're a team that's not named Alabama or Georgia. And Carolina every year has Clemson shoot in. Kentucky
Yeah,
has Louisville. Florida has Florida State. So what does that mean for teams like Missouri and Ole Miss? Well, I'll tell you what that means for teams like Missouri. This is what it means right here. Central Arkansas, Kansas, Lafayette, and UMass. That's what it means.
yeah,
And so I would rather see 9, and let's get I'd actually rather see something that's above and beyond that. To be honest, TJ, I don't know how much y'all have talked about this over the last few months or years. I'd like to see 9 plus a P5. You have to
yeah.
play another P5 or P4 in addition to your league schedule. Now, there are ways around that. I mean, I get it. Like if you're Missouri and you schedule, Boston College, that's a little bit different than South Carolina playing Clemson. But at the same time, at least it still somewhat, allows for there to be some sort of whatever the word is. Um, you know,
Competition.
yeah, like everybody's kind of on the same playing field. But Ole Miss has done this for years, and they've done it. It's been a little bit different lately. Lane has made it a point, and the administration has made it a point to play some better teams. But Missouri is known for it, and Kentucky is known for it. They'll go out and schedule a bunch of teams. They have no business playing those games. They just don't. And South Carolina's got South Carolina State. So, somebody's going to look at that and go, well, they're playing South Carolina State. Who's this guy? I get it. You're right. I understand that. But I also can point to all of the future schedules and past schedules and rattle off North Carolina and NC State, Virginia Tech, and Miami, and Clemson every single year.
Yeah.
The Gamecocks have made it a point to play somebody in addition to the team that they already have to play at the end of the season, and that was the best team in college football for a span. So I think that I know we're kind of getting off in a never land, but some of this junk, Missouri, you don't even need to watch them play until the Gamecocks come to town on September the 20th.
Yeah, as much as I want to give Florida crap at all times, the same thing there. Like they play us every year out of schedule or out of conference. They played Miami last year and this year. They just got done playing Utah a couple of big games. They played Michigan in a neutral before that. I think they've got a matchup with Notre Dame at some point. And it's better for the fans. Like even when Florida State plays, we play East Texas A&M this year. Right now, last year we out of conference. We had Bama. I'm sorry, we had Notre Dame and we had Florida out of conference. This year we got Bama in Florida. We got Georgia in 2 years in Florida. Obviously, we'll see if that one ends up even happening. But when they play East Texas A&M, like who even cares? It's just so. No, I'm all with you on that one. I hope scheduling gets kind of fixed at some point, after they fix the other 17 things that need to be fixed in the sport. Jay, where can people follow you, man? Where can they find your work?
Yeah. Well, they can. There's a couple ways. You can always download our app. It's free. Chief, like Indian Chief. Chief Sports. Of course, if you go to our YouTube page, you type in Chief Sports South Carolina and subscribe to that. We got a bunch of great programming. It's not all related to the Gamecocks that I think a lot of people would really enjoy, and you can find us on Twitter as well. We're linked with the Big Spur, who covers the University of South Carolina. So if you follow that, then you probably follow us already. But yeah, man, always appreciate the time, and always happy to talk football. It's 150 days from right now until football season, not August 30th, August 23rd, till football season kicks off. And God willing, Stanford will be able to do that with a football coach, because they don't have one right now.
Yeah, I told my wife the other day, I was like, hey, I'm kind of thinking about going to Dublin again this year for the week 0 game. And she's like, Florida State's not playing, right? And I was like, no, I just had a good time. And she's like, yeah, I'll kill you. Like, you're not, yeah. Like, so anyway, if somebody that is at some point playing in Dublin, like, go, absolutely go. But I wish I could go this year again when it actually kicks off. So
That's Iowa State and Kansas State, right?
yeah. Oh yeah, fun Big 12 matchup. Like I'd be all about it, but she put a nix on that real quick. So
Hey, well, you got to reserve your energy for August 30th. When the Tide come to town.
That's a big one for sure. So
yeah,
man, I appreciate you a ton for hanging out, buddy.
Oh, all the time, man. I really appreciate it, and hope everybody's having a great spring.
Thanks, man.